This is straight up war. We're going into global genocide. It's crystal clear. It's almost embarrassing when I have to explain it to some, especially any military people that don't get it. I'm like discounting them completely.
I've got my great friend, Michael Yon, back on the show. And like I've said before, he's not just my friend. This man has traveled the whole world, is probably one of the world's premier war correspondents. He is an expert in war, an expert in peace, which we rarely seem to have any of, and an expert on the Darien Gap. He is one of the best journalists working right now. And just to give you a little background on the Darien Gap, for those of you that haven't heard him on my show before or haven't listened to him, you really should, because you're not going to get information like this anywhere else in the world. He is on the ground. It's like having your own personal CIA clandestine officer all over the world, giving you information directly from where it's happening. And the Darien Gap is in the jungles in Panama, and it's an area that is traversed by the majority of migrants that have to come from outside of Panama on their journey to the United States, to the southern border. It is also considered one of the most dangerous places on planet Earth in land crossings. And this is not over exaggeration whatsoever. Children die there, women die there, people are raped. You have not only the natural elements, but you have tribal leaders in those jungles that are in control. They're criminal networks, very ancient criminal networks in these jungles. You also have corruption within the Panamanian system. It happens sometimes. And so you're up against so many obstacles that the journey, I've told some people even before they got near the Darien, I said, you really have to think about the lives of your family, because is it really going to be worth it for you to make this crossing? Like I've said over and over again, I plan on going to the Darien Gap. In the last episodes, I said I was planning on going. Actually, a week ago, the thing was, there was a outbreak of various viruses that have once again put people out and in the hospital. So instead of taking that risk and going into the Darien Gap then, because I'm in Israel now, I decided to go ahead and just wait it out. And I'll go to the Darien Gap when I return back home to the United States, which, by the way, is so different than anything I think I noticed before I left. And we'll talk about that and Trump's indictment from the perspective of what I'm hearing here in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And I'm going to bring you tons of great stories. I'm here. I'm going to be collecting stories. I'm going to be posting. I've only been here a day now. When you hear me on this podcast, it may be a little bit longer, but right now, as I'm sitting here, I landed early this morning. I'll talk to you a little bit about that, what I saw, what I ate, the amazingly beautiful Israeli people and this beautiful nation, and how warm and welcoming it is to be here. And before we left last time, I want to talk about this, because I don't want you to forget about the last podcast with Michael Yon. I kind of want you to remember where we're going here. The last time we spoke to Michael was talking about the World Economic Forum and its connection to our southern border crisis. And the reason I'm in Israel is because I am here visiting to learn more about how the Israelis protect their border and what we can do to not only strengthen our relationship with our greatest ally, Israel, but protect our borders in the United States, our sovereign nation, by learning something from our friends. And this is what Michael Yon does. And right now he's investigating the World Economic Forum and the crisis that is happening at our southern border, and why the W.E.F. is also focused on places like Belgium, why they are moving and supporting these massive migration waves into our nations. We'll pick up right there after I tell you about Allegiance Gold. I love Allegiance Gold. Thank you so much, Allegiance Gold, for being a sponsor of the Sara Carter Show. And I feel grateful that I can get the word out to you about this incredible company, Allegiance Gold. Listen to this, folks. My friends at Allegiance Gold can help you protect your IRA or your 401k. And I always talk about diversification, diversifying your funds, not putting all your eggs in one basket. And look, Don't just trust me on this. Do the research yourself. Do the research yourself. Allegiance Gold can have gold and silver delivered directly to your front door. Think about that. Or they could back up your 401k or your IRA. These are all the things that Allegiance Gold can do. And they'll go over everything with you so you can protect your family, protect your children, and protect your finances. And right now you can get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. So don't wait. Call or click today, 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, S-A-R-A, no H. Or go to protectwithsara.com. That is protectwithsara.com. We can't control the Biden administration, folks, but we can prepare. That's 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, S-A-R-A, or go to protectwithsara.com.
So let's go back so that the listeners really understand what's going on here. The World Economic Forum does not really believe in sovereignty. They believe in breaking down the borders. It's about a globalism. It's about a new global world that is where the United States or, Great Britain or any power nation will be diminished as part of a more globalist, right, type of agenda. And that globalist agenda works in contrary to everything we stand for as Americans. Am I right?
Let's talk about the strategic importance to what you're talking about to Panama and Netherlands, and why I go spend so much time in both places, in Japan and places like this. Panama, 6% of global trade flows through that canal, right?
Right.
And Panama, if you control Panama, which Chinese Communist Party and World Economic Forum are both working hard to do, if you control Panama, you have great influence over, you're in a perfect position for South American influence, Central and Mexico and United States, and because you're controlling not only the hourglass of trade through the Panama Canal, like 6% of global trade goes through that canal, right? And another, in the funnel from huge amounts of migration through not just it's weaponized migration from and through South America. For instance, we have people from at least 140 countries going through South America, and they come out, you're going to see them, and they're going to come out coughing and wheezing with things like tuberculosis and itching with things like scabies, and that sort of, you're going to see it, and a lot. And they're getting on buses together, and they're coming up to the United States, and in huge numbers, you're going to see it. And the thing is the World Economic Forum for years has said that they want to cause a migration of about 1.2 billion with a B people. They can pull it off by creating more HOP, human osmotic pressure. HOP, human osmotic pressure, is the push and pull of migration. This is why I cover food issues so much and energy issues. For instance, I was at BASF chemical plant last year, biggest chemical company in the world. I was there in Germany twice last year. And before Nord Stream was blown up, I was inside of BASF. And I asked the man inside BASF, after doing a tour around this 10 square kilometer plant, I said, what happens to BASF if Nord Stream is interrupted or destroyed, right? And he said something like, in his German way, he said something like, I have this on audio, something like, then BASF is dead, right? Keep in mind, Nord Stream is this and this to energy in Europe. Nord Stream 2 was not flowing, it was pressurized, but Nord Stream 1 was feedstock for BASF. Why is BASF important? BASF and other nitrogenous fertilizer producers are very important because they produce nitrogenous fertilizers using what's called the Haber-Bosch process. The Haber-Bosch process is one of the most important chemical processes in the world. It was first theorized in about 1903 by a German chemist named Fritz Haber, right? Fritz Haber discovered, he thought in a thermodynamics book that he published that he could take the hydrogen off of natural gas and combine that with the nitrogen that we're breathing and make ammonia. And with that ammonia, you could make explosives and fertilizers, right? And so in 1908, he actually managed to make a tiny amount of ammonia. It's very difficult, it takes pressures and temperatures and that sort of thing. But he finally did it. And then in about 1913, another German chemist. This one's name's Karl Bosch. That's what's called the Haber-Bosch process. Karl Bosch took Fritz Haber's idea and he made it industrial at BASF at Ludwigshafen, Germany, where I was at twice last year. So in 1914-ish, 15-ish, they actually started mass production, and you'll see that the population of humanity started to skyrocket around then. Now, not just because of the Haber-Bosch process, that's part of it. It's also things like vaccines, and it's also things like, fungicides and pesticides and that sort of thing.
Well, but we've seen a huge, just so everybody who's listening understands, because you're telling it like it is. You're telling a truth that very few people, especially listeners of mine, have actually heard. There is a fertilizer shortage, point blank. This started a fertilizer shortage. That fertilizer shortage set off a catastrophe globally. And I believe it's still continuing. And
you ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. We're just getting warmed up, on what's about to unfold.
You think it's going to get far worse?
Oh, like exponentially. Jordan Peterson came over to Netherlands. I took him out to a farm. I had 2 dinners with him. I took him to a farm one day.
Jordan Peterson, he is a conservative professor. Explain how important he is in this.
I've done shows with him twice now in Netherlands. Well, once we were together in Netherlands, and another time I was just in Netherlands with Eva Vlardingerberg. Actually, we went on together. And so but the bottom line is, I spend so much time in Netherlands because it all plays into this larger picture, and it's a key aspect of it. So Jordan Peterson, I was one of the dinners that I had with him in the Netherlands was with the scientist. I arranged that. And then the next night we had dinner again, and I arranged to have dinner with Jordan and a retired CEO of a huge Dutch chemical plant that's like BASF, but it's the Dutch version, right?
Right.
And I asked this retired CEO who's been creating the nitrogenous fertilizers all of his life using the Haber-Bosch process. How do these shortages affect? This was before Nord Stream was blown up, by the way. And I warned as we were having dinner, if Nord Stream goes, that's a big deal. That and the Ukraine war and all these other things, this additive pressures, right? So the next thing you know, I was watching Nord Stream every day. There was a website you could watch the flows. And finally it went to 0. And I said, I hope that's a glitch, and then we see the bubbles coming from the sea, right? Unbelievable. Anyway, not unbelievable, predictable. I mean, I went to BASF and I asked what happens if Nord Stream gets interrupted, and then it got interrupted, right? So we're having dinner, me and Jordan Peterson and the scientist, not scientist, that was the night before, and the retired CEO of a Dutch chemical company. And I said, please explain to Dr. Peterson what you've already told me, and I'll just be quiet and eat my steak, right? And so the retired CEO said, well, first of all, places like Brazil, where the United States gets a lot of its protein, by the way, are not going to have enough fertilizers, right? This is important. And so that will, and obviously Brazil is a huge food producer. India will not get enough. Countries around the world, I said, can they get it from Trinidad and Tobago? He said, nope. What about Saudi Arabia? What about, he said, China? And there's just not going to be enough paint to paint the barn, right? And so there's not going to be enough. So right now, for instance, when you come to Panama, well, you're not going to have enough time. But if you did, I would take you out to small farmers who are not even farming this year because they can't afford the fertilizers. So the actual food production is not only are the food prices going up, the actual production is going down at small farms and big farms. You'll see the fertilizer prices are like a yo-yo. They go down and go up. And people say, oh, the fertilizer prices are going down. They're going down because of demand destruction. People aren't buying as much because they can't afford it, right?
Well, let me stop there. So now I know this is a lot for everybody to take in. So I'm going to try to break this down so we can talk about it. Everything is affecting everything else. What we're seeing is a convolution of things happening across the globe. We have enormous migration coming towards America. We see a problem, obviously, with fertilizer shortages, food shortages, wars breaking out, the concern of a possible World War III in Ukraine. We see China expanding exponentially The Chinese Communist Party is on the move. It sees a perfect, I call it the sharks circling, in our waters, sees a perfect opportunity to seize its power. And we, in a way, are aiding and abetting our own demise of our own nation. And it's happening right in our face, Michael, like theater, like some kind of weird twisted joke on us. And I'm talking just like you're saying, I'm talking to Border Patrol agents, I'm talking to Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers. I speak to my friends in Mexico and in Central America, that are working intel in those regions, and they're saying they don't even know how to stop this. They don't even know how they're going to get people to listen to what actually is really happening here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big deal. Panama is obviously key terrain. And I've told top members of the Panamanian government, which you will meet on Friday when you come down there. I know you're coming, right? And I told them in a 2.5-hour meeting recently down in Panama that you will be genocided. That is clearly part of the plan. There is no plan to keep you in Panama. The only reason that you own Panama and now is because nobody has come and physically taken it from you. And I warned them.
But do you think it will be economically? Do you think it's going to be economically? Do you think like what we're seeing with Lula and China Lula opening the door to the one and, to the Chinese Communist Party. And now we see Maduro coming in. So obviously we're feckless, right? Maduro's got now, Lula opening the door for him so he could just go through the Brazilian markets for money. And so we're seeing the growth of communism. Is it just, it's not about so much physical war as it is about financial, or?
This is way beyond mere communism. They're using the idiots who follow communist doctrine as useful idiots. Now, the communists think that they're going to end up being in charge, but they're useful idiots. And you know what happens to useful idiots, right? Yeah, they are just useful idiots.
Until there's no more use of them.
This is way above mere communism, right? This is the people in the World Economic Forum have no intention of being communists. They have intentions of being plantation owners.
Wait, and I want to stop right there, just really quick, because I want people to understand this is not conspiracy theories. When I was in Hungary and I was in Budapest and I walked through that house of terror and I looked, it was a museum. It was set up of all the people that had been tortured in Budapest, that had been taken into this house of horrors, this building, and they were tortured and beaten and poisoned, and every farmer lost their land. And I mean, it happened like that. It happened before they even had time. It crept in slowly. Like it was a frog slowly boiling is what they were telling me, But then when it happened like that. And everyone was now subjugated to this government, under the Soviet control at that time. So you're saying like, are we the frogs slowly boiling, Michael? Are we all just...
Obviously. Yeah. I mean, it's like, keep in mind, I've written 6 books and 3 are on information war. And those 3 books that are on information war are only in Japanese, actually, because I've been working for years to wake up the Japanese, right? That's why I know Masako that you met in Hungary. And in fact, I was asking her to go to places like that. And she tracked down Klaus Schwab over at Davos. You may have seen that. It went viral. And she's unbelievable, Masako. And so, in fact, she's been to Darien on the Colombia and the Panama side and into Mexico and all of these places, right? And to Netherlands, all of these things must be taken into context. There's no truth in the world without context. When you look at when you ask the average person why are they trying to take the farmland from the Dutch farmers, people will say to control the food supply. Full stop. That's eggshell truth. That's truth. But there's another truth that's deeper than that. There's the truth of the hen that laid the egg, and there's the truth of the ecosystem that hen lays in, and there's the truth of what's in the egg. The taking the farmland is only part of what's happening in the Netherlands. The farmers own about 62% of the land in the Netherlands. Well, that number is decreasing by the hour. It's probably in the 50s at this point. It was 62 estimated, 6 months ago, and But they're taking that land in part to, I spent a lot of time in Netherlands. I was just there for the elections, in fact, in March. And Netherlands is a huge food producer, right? Massive. And they do a lot of food research. So taking that farmland, one, will help control the food production. However, there's a bigger story called Tri-State City. And then there's a bigger story above Tri-State City. The bigger story of Tri-State City is this smart city that will be, you can find it online, Tri-State City. You can see the maps. And Tri-State City will hold about 30 million people as, envisioned. You need all that most of the farmland in Netherlands to make it, most of it, because Tri-State City will comprise most of Netherlands, part of Belgium, and part of Germany, those 3 states. That's why it's Tri-State City, right? Giant smart city, right? They're doing massive weaponized migration in there as well, replacement migration. And why Netherlands? Why not Germany? Why not some other place? Well, it's part of Germany. I'll tell you why. Because if you look at the railway that China has built all the way from Shanghai in the Pacific, which I've been to, I've spent about a year running around China, and it goes all the way across Asia, and it goes through Germany, and it goes right to Rotterdam. Rotterdam is the huge harbor in Netherlands. It's the biggest harbor in Europe, right? And the second biggest harbor in Europe is Antwerp, just south of Rotterdam. That's in Belgium, right? Rotterdam's Netherlands, Antwerp is Belgium. They're both in Tri-State City. Those, again, 2 arteries. If you control those 2 ports in Tri-State City, and the railway goes all the way from the Pacific Ocean all the way to Rotterdam, or whichever way you're going with your train, right? This is massive control. The Rhine River dumps out there at Rotterdam. This is huge control. This is like the Panama Canal of Europe, right? But nobody seems to get that. They just stop at the food supply. I'm like, it's way beyond mere food supply. It's also weaponized migration replacement strategy. You see in the United States, they're floating the idea that the aliens may have to live in your homes with you, right? And people are like, they'll never live in my home. Yeah, they will. Yeah, they will. 100%. They'll live in your neighbor's home when they start printing money and giving, $400 or $800 a month of printed, digital money for you to keep them. You know what I mean? Or if you don't keep, and you know what I'm saying?
You know what?
Right?
That's what I used to say. I used to say, why not just send them to Nancy Pelosi's house? She has a huge house. She could probably take 3 or 4 families. But you're saying, I was joking around about that, saying, let's put them in the Dems homes, the people who want this open. You're saying, no, they're actually going to offer incentives, because I saw that happening in New York City when I could not believe, Michael, and I'm sure the audience, I'm sure you all out there can't believe this. When I get to New York and I go to Coney Island and I'm at PS 188 and there's parents standing there and they're like, there's a bunch of guys in my kids' gym that have been put in my elementary school gym and they're housing them there. And my kids are having to play on the tarmac where the parking lot is, my elementary school kids, and they've got police inside the school, keeping the kids prisoner, basically, because all these men who have not been vetted are sleeping in their gym and walking around smoking cigarettes and drinking liquor. I thought this is a Babylon Bee headline. This cannot be happening in America. And sure enough, it was.
I've been warning about it for years, as have other crazy people, right? Weaponized migration, as you know, I study war. War is what I do all around the world, right?
That's why I call you.
War after war after war, and conflict after conflict after conflict. They have different faces, right? Everyone is different. Wars and conflicts are like mammals. They're all different, like a mouse and an elephant and a mouse and a blue whale are very different. They're also the same. We could sit here and talk about how different a mouse and a blue whale are for a month. And then we could turn right around and talk about how similar they are. Once you go to, say, 5 different wars and conflicts, the 6th one starts to be a little bit more easy to understand. You're like, wait a minute, they all have a heart. They all have a brain. They all need oxygen. They all give off waste. You know what I mean? They breathe, and you know what I mean? They all have certain things that you can actually understand. And once you've been doing this for enough years, you can walk in and start, it's like these airplanes behind me. A pilot that's been a pilot for 10,000 hours can get in any one of these aircraft and start to figure it out. Might not exactly know how to do it, but that pilot can figure it out given a little bit more time, right?
And what you're saying, Michael, is that you're starting to see those signs, regardless of how they had to paint lipstick on a pig. You're starting to
This is
see those
war.
signs.
This is straight up war. This is straight up war. We're going into global genocide. It's crystal clear. It's almost embarrassing when I have to explain it to some, especially any military people that don't get it. I'm like discounting them completely. You know what I mean?
I hope you are learning as much as I did today from this conversation. Like I said, I'm in Israel. I'll be bringing many stories to you from this beautiful Holy Land, the apex of the world, the heartbeat of our world, I believe, right here from the Middle East. I'm going to be investigating what's happening here at the border and hopefully sharing that insight if anyone wants to listen in the United States on how we best can protect our border. And we'll be doing that with Tom Homan and many, many others here at the border. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much to the great Michael Yon. And I promise you that you need to tune in later this week to hear what else he has to say. That's how big this interview was that we had to break it up into 3 parts. Again, shalom from Israel. I can't wait to show you everything I've been doing here in the Holy Land. Follow me on Truth at Sarah Carter Official, on Twitter at Sarah Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation, and God bless the great state of Israel. Thank you.